In 2 Kings 2, we have the account of Elijah passing the mantle on to Elisha, and they visit Gilgal, Bethel, and Jericho. And this is post Elijah's really dark season when he is what we would call today clinically depressed and wants to die. And God, as a way of bringing him out of that state, invites Elisha to walk alongside of him and plow together with him in a day of compromise and decline. And Gilgal and Bethel and Jericho represent key places of entrance when the sons of Israel came into the promised land that have now become places of idolatry and pagan worship of the Baals. And we discover that now there are sons of the prophets in Gilgal, Bethel, and Jericho, which means that Elijah and Elisha together have plowed the field and made room for a coming day when there would be a recovery of the testimony of Yahweh. One of the things that I was shocked at a while back was that on social media, somebody went after the notion of costly grace and said it was false and because there's no such thing as cheap grace. Well, the term cheap grace and costly grace comes from a martyr of the faith, Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And when we think about what it cost for Elijah and Elisha both to bear testimony to God in a day of decline, it was costly. And to plow with 12 yoke of oxen and give that up to follow Elijah was costly. To stand against Ahab and Jezebel was costly. And to labor in the midst of Baal worship to raise up guilds of prophetic voices that could bring people back to an awareness of their covenant with Yahweh, that's costly. I want you to listen to Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the martyr's words on cheap grace and costly grace. Cheap grace is the mortal enemy of our church. Our struggle today is for costly grace. Cheap grace is grace without costs. Cheap grace is grace without discipleship. Grace without the cross. Grace without the living incarnate Jesus Christ. Costly grace is the gospel which must be sought again and again. The gift which has to be asked for. The door at which one has to knock. It is costly because it calls us to discipleship. It is grace because it calls us to follow Jesus Christ. It is costly because it costs people their lives. It is grace because it thereby makes them live. May God bring us to a place where we never cheapen the grace of God, but embrace the costly grace, the cross-shaped grace, the grace of the suffering Savior to bring about the power of resurrection life in a culture that's deeply compromised. Have a great weekend.